Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Wednesday, March 11th, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show. Thank you for tuning in here. Today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. We're halfway through our week. We've got so much to talk about today, as always. But the question I want to start off today's show is, has Iran planted mines now in the Strait of Hormuz to deter any type of traffic coming in and out of the region? I find this very interesting. I got to be honest with you. If this were to happen, first of all, we have satellite imagery of the area. I think we would obviously know if we had the vessels of Iran to actually put these mines in the strait or any of these surrounding areas of this. But that didn't stop President Trump going to Truth Social to discuss, saying that there were reports from U.S. intelligence that were now suggesting that Iran may have been placing these naval mines in key shipping corridors. Through confirmation remains limited. So, do we have this information? Do we not have this information? What does the information say about this? Again, I find this very difficult to believe that they would do this after this war has begun, for several reasons. Number one, why would they put their vessels out there to do such a thing? Apparently, we have destroyed their navy. So that asks the question, how do they get around to do this? Nobody really can tell us. Now, it is true that Iran does have the type of technology to do this. They do possess about 5,000 to 6,000 naval mines. These are moored, these are bottom, these are drifting. These are drone mines, for example. They can move around in the region. And they're very capable of disrupting the shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Again, this is a very narrow corridor. This is about roughly 21 miles, stretching from Iran and over to the other side of the Gulf. Here's the problem, though, that I have with this. And again, I'm not saying it's impossible. They don't need to do this. They control the entire coastline. They can see everything that's happening in their region. All they need to do is use some drones in that area to take down some of these ships. It's not impossible. And once that takes place, again, you don't need to put mines in the strait. So while we're getting these reports from U.S. officials indicating that Iran may have begun laying these mines for a limited number of naval mines now in the Strait of Hormuz, it is yet to be seen. I think this is more rhetoric. Now, President Trump has responded to this, again on Truth Social, saying that the United States would respond with strong military action should we have done this. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about this. We're still not moving any ships through this area. You have yet to see any type of shipping lanes being opened back up. No one's even taking President Trump on the now deleted tweets of, hey, we'll support you, we'll guide you through, we'll offer you insurance if you go through with us. No one has yet to take up that offer. To tell you the truth, I don't blame them, to be honest with you. So I look at this, I say to myself, more bluster. I don't really see this as being true. There's earlier intelligence reports saying that Iran could use small crafts that carry 2 to 3 mines in each, and of course, place them throughout the area. Estimates over the years suggest that Iran could have, what's saying here is 2 to 6. I say it's 5 to 6 in the research I've found, though. It could have been made in Iran, China, and Russia. Yep, there we go. So, I don't believe this. I think this is more pounding our chest right now, saying, try this and, we'll attack you even more. First of all, I don't buy that. Not for a second. I don't buy any of this. It's a nice story. I think it's obviously escalates the situation. It obviously prevents the end of this conflict. But I see this as more talk and less action, of course, from the United States. Right now, things have not changed drastically in the war. We're still obviously bombing, and they're still obviously bombing sites. I saw some imagery of Israel this morning. It looks horrible, by the way. So we want an end to this conflict, folks. I don't know what the end will be. You have Pete Hegseth saying we're in for the long haul. We're doing this. We will not stop. We will determine the end of this conflict. President Trump is echoing the same sentiments. Iran is saying we're not going to let up, though. This will end on our terms. So we really don't know what will take place. How long can Israel hold out? I think that is the bigger question to be asked at this point. But we're not seeing any side let up as of yet. And Iran is really flexing their muscle right now. We're seeing Iron Dome completely collapse inside of Israel. These missiles coming in are hitting their targets very precisely. And it's causing a lot of damage. And it's really sad to see this. It's really sad to see this. Obviously, the talks about what's taking place inside Iran is, again, hitting the oil deposits and what have you, causing lots of environmental issues, lots of health risks to the Iranian people that we're apparently supposed to care so much about. I was listening to a talk show this morning saying, how could people not champion what we're doing right now? Freeing the women of Iran. And I say to myself, freeing the women of Iran? You're bombing their infrastructure. You're bombing their oil deposits. You're causing God knows how much toxic air now for them to breathe in. Chaos, fires breaking out throughout Tehran, a city of 10 million people. I told you on Monday's show, we're hitting civilian targets now. We have removed ourselves from hitting the military targets, probably because we can't locate them, probably because they're too difficult to hit or make a difference with. So now the next option is now we go for the civilian targets. Why? Because they're hoping the civilians will rise up and either say to the government, hey, cry uncle right now, let's stop this. Or they simply try to take over the government. Those are the two options they have with that approach. I don't think it's going to work. And again, I find it very, very hypocritical. We're talking about freeing people. We just killed 165 young schoolgirls on February 28th. It's unbelievable. It really is that we can make those statements. So I think this is really a nothing story. I think it'll go away very soon. I don't really see this as being the trick to stop the traffic because, again, we're not seeing any traffic. I think they know, the United States knows they can hit us. And they can hit us very, very easily should we try to move through that strait. And it's not going to happen. By the way, we had Senator Blumenthal, the great senator, by the way, from Connecticut. He's shocked that the Russians may be playing a role with the Iranians. Take a listen to clip one.
There is also, as disturbingly as anything else, the specter of active Russian aid to Iran, putting in danger American lives. Literally, Russia seems to be aiding our enemy, actively and intensively with intelligence and perhaps with other means. And China also may be assisting Iran.
Did this guy just wake up yesterday? Does he not realize that all three of these countries are in a close economic pact with one another called BRICS? He's shocked that Russia might be supporting Iran in this conflict over the United States and Israel? By the way, Senator, tell us, who is the United States aiding and abetting in the Russian-Ukraine war? Oh, that's right, we're aiding and abetting Ukraine. We've given them about $350 billion of our taxpayer money that everyone listening is paying for, by the way. Amazing. He has no idea what's going on. Of course they're aiding and abetting them. Why wouldn't they? We know they're offering them intelligence. Why do you think President Trump called President Putin just a day ago? Because he wants a way out of this, and he knows that Russia can probably broker a deal with the Iranians because he no longer can. That's what's going on right now. That's the truth of the matter right now, folks. That's where we are in this war right now. That's how great it's going for the United States and Israel. And by the way, who are we aiding and abetting in this conflict? Are we aiding and abetting Iran? Of course not. We've killed 182 civilians that we know of right now. 165 of them are young schoolgirls that we incinerated. And we're talking about Russia aiding and abetting Iran as if it's a shock? By the way, Senator, who tried to assassinate President Putin at his residence? Was it the United States? Yes, it was. Now, of course, we didn't hear that in the press, but we know. They know, by the way, too. They took apart this drone. They saw, oh, look who programmed this. Programmed this in Germany. The United States did. Who gave it to the Ukrainians? The Germans did. Ah, look at there. There's a paper trail right there. They know what's going on. They know exactly what's going on. So for him to act shocked about this, again, is beyond me. But there we go. That's a U.S. senator. Has no idea what he's talking about. And yeah, folks, this escalates. This continues to escalate as time goes on. We don't see an end of this anytime soon. I would prepare for the long haul. That's why I've told you time to. And by the way, I've told you this at the end of every show. Make sure you're prepared. Make sure you always have food for a couple months. You don't know what's going to take place. You don't know if the grocery store shelves are going to be empty. You know if you're not going to have access to your medicines or your supplements or currency or tools or whatever it may be. Fuel, for God's sakes. I always tell you to do those things. Not to alarm you, not to panic you, but to be prepared. And again, I look at CNBC right now. I'm looking at the stock market right now. Brent crude is up 4.02% today, $91.33 per barrel right now. That's Brent crude coming out of Norway. We look at the WTI out of Texas, $86.74, up almost 4% today. So while we saw a big decrease in the pricing, obviously, we're seeing those prices starting to go back up right now. Because as long as that strait stays shut, as long as that oil does not pass through, you're going to see the markets really start to react to this. And it's becoming such a concern now, and I resort to my article here in the New York Post, the IEA now, the International Energy Agency, is expected now to push for 400 million barrels of oil to be released because of the soaring prices we're seeing due to the Iran war. Again, prices are up all throughout America. Now, they might not be up that much. We have seen the price in the markets starting to go down again, but they're starting to trickle back up now. Why do they start going back down? Because of Donald Trump's rhetoric. He said that we might have an end of this war. We're very close, right? The war is almost complete. Iran's done. Look at that. 90% of what they're shooting at us is decreased. Look at that. They're almost out of ammo. Once that happens, they'll cry to us. They're calling me up on the phone right now. They can't wait to make a deal. Well, none of that's true, by the way, just so we understand this. But when you see global energy agencies coming out and saying, listen, we got to start putting some oil back in the supply because these prices are going to start going up very, very high. The markets will have to adapt at some point. We're in the very early stage. We're in day 12 of this war. Now, this proposal would more than double the prior record from 2022 when the IEA, the member countries, roughly 32 of them, by the way, released 182 million barrels over a 2.5-month stretch following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is a much different thing, folks. We got to understand this. We've never seen anything like this, where we have 25% of the world oil supply is now being choked off. We've never seen anything like this. So now the IEA's 32 members, by the way, we're a part of that, they've now been asked to get ahead of this, right? They've been asked to go through with this. They say we're seeing oil that has surged as much as 40%. Now, while oil prices rebounded a little bit, we're seeing them start to trickle up now, yet again. Sowing doubt on the fact that, hey, maybe this will not happen. Maybe this is temporary. Well, no, it's not going to be temporary. You've cut off 20 to 25% of the world's global oil supply. Thank you, the United States. Thank you, Israel. And now countries have got to look into their own reserves to start putting this oil back in. That's what they want to do to ease the pricing here. It's, again, not a big shock because, again, go look at the prices inside California. Now, a lot of that is because of Gavin Newsom, for example. A lot of things coming out of the own state government. I understand that, but when you take the supply out, the prices have got to go up. At some point, folks, they are going to go up. That's just the way it is. I can't tell it to you any other way. And by the way, just so we understand this, the United States has roughly about 395 million barrels in its strategic oil petroleum reserve right now. This was as of March of last year. I don't know if President Trump replenished that since then, but that's the latest figure that we have coming out of there. We can hold up to about 715 million barrels. So if now we're going to start releasing our SPR numbers, start putting that in supply like Joe Biden did, for God's sakes. By the way, that's supposed to be for the military, not for U.S. consumption, not for consumers in the United States. So that just shows we're in dire straits with this oil supply. They don't want the oil supply to uptick because then they know pricing, goods and services, everything else is going to skyrocket as a result of that. Just like we saw under Joe Biden. When Joe Biden upset that supply chain, and we started to see the prices go $4, $5, $6 for unleaded. Some places were $7 in the United States. That caused the mass inflation that we started to see afterwards. Now, it could be true. This could be temporary. Let's say the war ends today. Everything could just be temporary. The prices will go back to normal. The strait opens back up. I don't see that happening, though. And that's why I see the rhetoric trying to ease these things. They're trying to ease the investors. They don't want them to panic. But when I start seeing the IEA coming out and saying, listen, you got to start dipping in these reserves right now because, listen, we don't want the price of oil to skyrocket, especially in Europe, where it's already happening now, already in Asia, where that's already happening. Yes, the United States lags behind. But the reason we're seeing this is because of our actions. And again, the length of this war will really determine how these prices start to go. And yeah, this is going to be the reality of the situation now, folks. We're going to see prices increase. Once those prices in oil go up, the price of the pump will obviously react in kind. And then you'll see goods and services also start to do the exact same. And what happens? The price of those goods go up, especially when we bring in things such as our imports, which already have a 15% tax on them as well. Those are already going to start going up as well. You're already going to be paying more as is. Again, I told you this time and time again because I want you to know what's going on. So prepare very, very closely, folks, because these prices are going to start going up as time goes on. So keep that in mind. By the way, another indicator that this is actually happening, by the way, I got to go to my article for us inside Bloomberg right now. We're seeing crop prices and production starting to go up. That's interesting, isn't it? That's very interesting. Why is that happening? Well, let's get into it. Now, the article starts off kind of easing you into it. It says crop prices have now pared earlier losses as the United States unleashed its most intense day of the attacks on Iran. Well, okay. That's what we've been told. We've got so much going on with this, right? We're just going to hit them super hard. It's going to end soon. Everyone's happy. But what about the production in the United States? We look at pricing right now. So we can look at some things. Chicago wheat declined nearly 3% at market open before paring some losses to trade just at 0.3% lower. Okay, things have gotten a little bit lower. We got soybean oil, a key feedstock for biofuel that has benefited from the rallying crude oil, also retreated about 2.6% before rising 0.5%. Raw sugar futures were 1.5% lower after falling nearly 2.9% in early trading. We look at things like cocoa futures, rose for a third session in New York as traders weighed sluggish bean arrivals against expectations of a global surplus. But what's the big takeaway from all this? Again, we're looking at extreme price volatility right now in all these markets, all these imports that come into the United States. But then we look a little bit further in the article. What does it tell us? We're looking at grain and oil seed prices have surged in the past few days as the Middle East conflict, which is a war, by the way. It's not a conflict, it's a war. It's going to go on for months, possibly longer, possibly into the fall. That's what they're coming out now behind the scenes and saying to us. And it has upset the energy prices and disrupted fertilizer flows. Oh, what do we need a fertilizer for? All these crops we're producing in the United States. And this in turn has raised crop production costs now and stoked food security concerns as of late. Well, no kidding. And by the way, let me just hone in on this fertilizer business. This is very important we understand this. Now, fertilizer, particularly nitrogen fertilizer, which primarily comes out of Canada, it's our biggest supplier. But what people don't know is that 25% roughly of the imports that come in for fertilizer comes in from the Middle East, which has now again been cut off. So you're looking at 10 to 12% of the overall use of fertilizer circulated inside the United States that is now no longer there. Now imagine $2 billion of fertilizer gone from supply. Prices have to rise. That means price for the crop farmers has to go up. So now they pay more, which means you pay more for those prices, for that commodity. So the fertilizer coming out of, let's say, Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Oman, Jordan, Israel, Bahrain, all out of commission right now because of this war right now with Iran. And when those imports come, you'll have a nice little 15% tariff on them. That means a 15% tax because all of the global tariffs that President Trump has just recently issued after, SCOTUS said, sorry, you can't use the IEPA. You got to go to something else. So maybe SCOTUS will shut that down again at some point as well. So now we can expect in the near future, thanks to this disruption in the fertilizer coming in the United States, unless, of course, we try to buy more from Canada, you're going to see the crop production increase, which means, God forbid, you see the price of your produce go up now. And by the way, let me just point this out to you. I always tell you to eat grass-fed beef, meat products, obviously, that's what I tell you to do. That's what animals should eat. But what about the generic, conventional beef that we get in the United States that's fed things like grains and corn? Well, what do you think happens to that price? That price goes up, the price of the production goes up, that means your price at the grocery store continues to go up, which is already up for beef prices in the United States. Because we have a supply issue of beef coming in from Mexico, for example, these prices are soon going to go up as well. This is why I tell you, always prepare, always plan ahead. The volatility in this market will remain high. It'll be sensitive to the energy prices, but also these fertilizer prices now too. That will have to go up. Probably 20-25% from what you're paying right now, roughly. So I tell you this, folks, I want you to get ahead of the curb because this is the reality we're in right now. I don't say this just to come down to the Trump administration. I don't want to, but this is the reality. This is what I see right now, so I've got to tell it to you. Oil prices go up, gas prices go up, getting it to the market goes up, but also the production, if it goes up, you're paying for that difference as well. So plan ahead. Stock up on items now while you can before the markets start to react, which they will very, very soon. So I'm glad Bloomberg pointed this out. Great article. Take a look at it. This is the reality of what's going on right now. Yes, we're seeing some downturns in some things. They're making some rebounds, okay? But overall, those prices are going to start to go back up. And if we have to resort to importing from other countries, like in South America, they get a nice 15% tax on them as is. Before that even hits the grocery store shelf, you're paying 15% on that. So be very much aware of all these things. Again, I tell you, buy organic if you can. Buy from the United States if possible. That's the best way to go about it. It is more expensive in some cases, but hey, it might be the same as the generic things you're importing in the United States soon. So you might as well get the organic option if you can. Eat things that aren't covered in glyphosate and Roundup and God knows what else. These GMOs that you shouldn't be consuming at all. But I digress. Let's move into another article now I have for us. We got to talk about Epstein. I've been neglecting it. I've been talking about the war as of late because obviously that's the number one issue here in the United States. But let's talk about what's going on with Epstein's Mexico ranch now. Now we've got authorities now hunting for a dead foreign girls that could be buried on this property. Amazing. Amazing that we divert, we go talk about this war. They were talking about Nancy Guthrie. Again, awful that she was kidnapped. But does this deserve wall-to-wall coverage on every single show I see on the news? It was all over the place. That was the number one issue. This woman was abducted from her home. Again, horrible. Absolutely horrible. But we have, I think it's 1 million children that are abducted every single year in America. That's a lot of people, folks. That's a lot of people. And does that get wall-to-wall coverage every single day? I think that would be obviously something that's worth hearing about, though. But because it's a celebrity's mother that gets abducted now, and we're talking about it day in and day out, I think this should get a little bit more coverage, too. We have dead foreign girls buried on a New Mexico ranch, possibly. So what does it say about the pedophile millionaire now that plotted to use the ranch, as the article tells us, as a baby factory to seed the earth with more perfect humans? This guy is disgusting, by the way. How the hell do you associate with somebody like this that's this sick in the head? I don't know. I can't answer that question for you. But we know people did. He also allegedly buried the victims of deadly sex games there. I don't want to delve into that at all. Filmed horrific pornography of children, and had a bizarre labyrinth garden that is now a massive hole in the ground. So now the Zorro Ranch is what it was called, is now being searched by law enforcement. They're looking at the 33,000 square foot compound because of a tip that came in from a local host who received a horrifying tip back in November of 2019, just 3 months after Epstein, quote unquote, killed himself. And I put that in quotes because I don't believe it. But, of course, you believe whatever you want to believe. I don't believe he killed himself. Mossad does not kill Mossad, folks. You'll find that out at some point in your life. But that's the truth. I don't think this egomaniac, this elite, would kill himself. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. By the way, we have the evidence now suggesting he might not have killed himself. Well, if he didn't kill himself, what happened to him? That's a big question. I digress. So now we've got an investigation now about the claims of the Zorro Ranch. He believes that the property may hold another horrifying world behind Jeffrey Epstein. Again, this is way beyond just the buried bodies that could be on this property. And there's far more macabre and strange things that may have occurred here. I mean, there's so much about this guy. We look at these emails. We look at the money this guy got. How did this guy become this billionaire hedge fund? Guy didn't even graduate from college, for God's sakes. Why would this guy all of a sudden be associated with some of the top elite in the country, around the world? It doesn't really make any sense, folks. And the fact that everybody from Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Prince Andrew, none of these people knew that he was doing any of these wrong things, so-called. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. Now, the tip that this guy got, though, let's go on to this. The possibility that there are dead people now buried on this guy's property. He got a tip saying that both died by strangulation during a rough fetish sex. What is damning about the Epstein case is yet to be written, I think. But I mean, we have, 6.5 million pages of these emails that talk about, obviously, rape, murder, rituals, other things I don't even want to talk to you about. I don't even think I should talk to you about these things. I mean, it's all out there. You can go look at it. Lots have been redacted. Lots of names of these perpetrators has been redacted. And yet we can't figure out a way to get any criminal cases against any of these people that have talked about going to parties with infants, bringing back these people. It's absurd to me that we have a DOJ that is this inept and this compromised. 100%. There's no other way to tell it to you, folks. And I think one of the people that knows a lot of this is sitting in federal prison right now, largely pleading her Fifth Amendment rights, not to incriminate herself, but she knows the goods. She knows what's going on. She saw the people. She connected Epstein with these people. Make no mistake about it. This is the reality of the situation. Now, whether or not this tip is true, let's take the reality of the situation. There's roughly about 1,200 girls or young women rather, that were involved in this sex ring, we'll say, this prostitution ring, this pedophile ring, we'll say. Only about 200 of them are alive today. So the question remains, what happened to the 1,000 of them? Now, some will point to the Virginia Giuffre saying, oh, she killed herself in Russia. Okay, I'm sure she just randomly decided to kill herself while she was fleeing the United States to get away from all this. Okay, believe what you want. I don't care. The fact is she's dead now. Whether she killed herself or she was murdered, which is probably the more likely scenario, goes to beg the question, what happened to these victims? Why were these victims paid millions upon millions of dollars? If everything was just, well, they're close to being, they're in their teens, but they're legal. Okay, well, if that's the case, what are you paying them so much money for? Why are you paying out this money? Why would 1,000 people you've associated with randomly kill themselves or be dead now? Seems a bit odd, folks, doesn't it? I think you'd agree with me on this. So I don't know. I'm looking at pictures of this place. It creeps me out because God knows what disgusting, vile stuff took place at this location. I'm looking at another email here. I don't even know if I want to read this to you. This is how depraved this is. I don't even know if I want to read this stuff to you. I'm not going to read this. It's too dark, folks. It's too much. But hopefully the authorities get around to figuring out if there were people buried here, if there were people killed on this property. We should know who's been on this property. And I don't know. It's unclear what investigators probably will do with this. But they have big chunks of land they have to now dig up. The home was sold back in 2023. But there should be justice for these victims. That's what has to be present now in our society. People have got to be held accountable for this. And to think that it's just simply Jeffrey Epstein is beyond me, because how could it just be one person doing all this when you're around so many high-profile people? How could they not know this? Look, I get it. Somebody gets nabbed, and you don't know someone did one thing wrong. But this is a pattern over years and years and years of abuse, of assaults, of crime. And you're saying nobody has any idea that these things are happening? I still want to go through the information. Why did this guy have these rooms bugged in all these locations? What would be the purpose of that? Right? What he wanted to record himself? What is he, American Psycho? Right? Patrick Bateman, that's who this guy was? I don't think so. This guy was around too many powerful people, too many powerful world leaders, by the way. He knew 4 different Israeli prime ministers. And you're telling me none of these people had any clue as to what was going on at these locations? Why did he have a temple on one of his islands? At Little St. James? Nobody asked the question, gee, this sounds really weird. Why do you have a temple here? Why do you have a shower with a operating chair in it, right? Or an examination chair, whatever you want to call it. And nobody thinks this is odd? We look at these pictures and we look at these emails, all these people seem to be knowing exactly what's going on here. But yet our DOJ is meaningless. They do nothing. They gaslight you. They tell you, no, nothing's there. We can't really incriminate anybody. Todd Blanche says it. Pam Bondi says it. And you're looking at these emails going, they're talking about murder here. Someone was actually talking to Jeffrey Epstein about murdering somebody. And they still got 3 million pages, folks, that they have not yet released to the public. And again, we see lots of redactions. We don't even know the full story behind some of these. God knows what's in these 3 million pages they're holding on to. Or pages they've already destroyed. They won't even release to you. But there is a lot of information out there that's obviously the DOJ has access to. Obviously, they know the crimes. I mean, again, if you wrote an email to someone talking about murdering somebody, don't you think that person would be of some interest to at least the FBI or the DOJ? Yet, have we heard about any arrests that have arisen from any of this? None. Now they say, oh, it was just Epstein, it was just Maxwell. Yeah, it's just Bonnie and Clyde, right? Okay. If you believe that, I have a bridge I can sell you in New York, too, by the way. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Get the people closely associated with Epstein, the people that work for him, Epstein staffers, anybody like that. Get them to talk. Get the friends of it. Again, you can try to get people that knew him in that capacity to talk. Like, we saw what happened with Bill Clinton. Oh, I don't know what's going on here. I never saw anything. I never saw anything. I tell you, I never saw a thing. I thought he was a great guy. This is who these people are. People, oh, okay, nothing happened. Thank you, Mr. Comer. Thank you so much. It's a clown show, folks. It really is. And apparently Bill didn't have sexual relations with that woman, too, right? We got to believe him. We got to take him at his word. Well, what was the reality there? You're being gaslit, folks, on this, and it's very sad. Again, we should have justice for these victims. People that did these heinous acts should be held accountable. And I think a lot of Americans on both sides of the aisle believe this. And the people that want you to turn a blind eye, to look away from what's going on, who the hell are they to tell us what to believe, by the way? What scruples do they have? We're talking about sexual assault of women. We're talking about the women of Iran right now, right? A lot of them say, well, we got to free the people of Iran, the women, oh my God. They got to wear a burqa or whatever the headscarf is. I don't know what the hell it's called, even though they don't have to do that anymore. And these are the people lecturing us to turn a blind eye, to move on, to go away from what we see in front of us, who have no concern about this. This took place over years. And they want you to believe that it was just Jeffrey Epstein, who's quote-unquote might be dead. I mean, write me a better story, please. My goodness. I don't think we'll get any justice from this, folks. It's very sad that I have to tell you this. We were not going to get justice. We would have gotten it by now. We would have gotten it. Yeah, they'll drag some people in front of Congress. Do you know anything about this? I did not have sexual relations with anybody on that island. I never saw anything. I never told anyone to lie. Okay, thank you, Bill. Thank you Thank you for coming in, Bill. Well, actually, I didn't even come in. It was on Skype or whatever the hell it is. In Chappaqua. Yes, I'm sure the guy that was, mischievous around his wife, having sex with staffers was never doing anything scandalous with the guy doing scandalous things his entire life that nobody seemed to know anything about. Right. Okay. It's a clown show, folks, and we are all in it, unfortunately. We're all very much a part of this. I want to talk about Obamacare now. I know, we're going from Epstein to Obamacare. Okay, well, I got good topics for us today. What can I tell you? They're all good. I find you the best. Mehmet Oz, by the way, who's the administrator for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, recently came out in an interview saying on Monday from this report that millions of people could potentially be falsely enrolled in the Affordable Care Act, right? Obamacare. In January, earlier ACA enrollment figures indicated that there was a massive drop following 4 consecutive years of record growth. Interesting, right? Going from 23.6 million enrollees to about 22.8 million. Lots of people. Now, the signups were expected to fall after Republicans let the enhanced premium tax subsidies expire at the end of 2025. But that allowed Mehmet Oz to take to an interview on NBC News saying that he believes that some people on the Affordable Care Act plans should not be enrolled, and they expect the rate of enrollment will continue to fall to somewhere around 19 million people. So, folks, that's a lot of people in this program. The fact that they've got 23 million on it and they believe that it should be almost roughly 19 million, that's what, 4 million people almost on a program? A number that's too high? That's 4 million people ripping off a government program. Now, he believes that some of the signups are a result of fraud or mistakes, possibly. Either their income would not qualify them, or they've made too much or too little money. If you made too little of money, for example, you'd be on Medicaid. If you made too much money, you don't qualify for the program, so why would you be in it? Now, the experts, right? We always hear about the experts. Experts who spoke with the NBC News said that while fraud is certainly present in the Affordable Care Act marketplace, numbers given out by the administration are likely overstated. Okay. So let me ask you this, though. Who would some of these people possibly be? Who would some of these almost 4 million in this program enrolled be? Well, thankfully, we have the Government Accountability Office now that offers some suggestions for this. What did they say? They said some of these people could be the approval of fictitious applicants using fake or no documentation. How do you not use documentation when you're enrolling in a government program for healthcare? That seems a little bit shifty to me. Okay. They could also be using fake or stolen social security numbers, possibly. Enrollment of deceased individuals. We see this constantly, time and time again, with certain types of things. Or it could be unauthorized broker-initiated plan changes. So, in other words, you're switching from your plan from a different insurer, for example, to get on the program. Okay, I'm willing to grant all this to you. But you got the rules, though. You got the rules. You have income rules that allow you to be between 100 or 400% above the federal poverty line. So what does that mean? Well, if we're looking at 2025 statistics, for example, if you're one person, right, you earn between $15,000 and $60,240, right? Then you would qualify for Obamacare, if you're in that range. If you're a family of four, for example, earning between $31,200 and $124,800, what happens if you have one more kid, too, by the way? Would you just totally exclude it from using Obamacare? They love pushing that two-kid rule, right? It's interesting to me. Why? Well, because if you have three kids, you sustain the existing demographic, which they don't really like too much. They don't want people. Yeah, the more people, the more problems they have. And that allows them to bring in more immigrants, too. They love that. They do. Which brings me to my next point, though. Why does the Affordable Care Act cost so much, though? What's the reason for this? I thought it was supposed to bring healthcare premiums down, not raise them. Now, thankfully, I did the research for you. We know that since 2014, prices today are 70 to 100% higher for today's premiums that these people pay. And it just went up, by the way, 20% from last year. Now, we know Congress did not renew the enhanced subsidies. That makes sense. Therefore, the prices go up. So if you were one person last year, capped at $600 per year paying into this plan, your payments went up because it's no longer capped at the 8.5% of the income of which you earn. That's the way it works. Now, if you earn $1 over the 400% federal poverty line, you lose all your subsidies. That's how this plan works. But with the plan as is, you got roughly 13 to 15 million people paying more, and 2 to 3 million people losing their overall eligibility with the plan that Trump put forth that Congress passed. But Mehmet Oz, like I said, thinks that there's still way too many people on this program. Now, it might not just be people ripping off the system, although I'm certain that that obviously happens. But that number shouldn't be that high because if the safeguards were tightened and the verification came in, how are they still getting on the system? Why are the prices still going up? What else can be driving up the cost of the healthcare in America? Now, I doubt it's the quality of healthcare. I wouldn't assume that would be. Much like public education, the system has been destroyed on purpose, though. Why has that been? Well, because of a latent communist like Obama. He wants a single-payer healthcare system. He wants to destroy the program. Make it cost so much as they say, listen, the government's got to come in. The prices are too much. We've got to put these caps. We've got to put this and that on there. And we should have one system. One system everyone pays into. It'll be cheaper in the end, right? Everyone will buy it up at some point in time. And the government gets what they want. Single-payer healthcare coverage, right? Just go look at Canada or Cuba for details if you want to see how stellar their healthcare programs are. A way you can look forward to destroy the system and get the government to intervene as it always does, and it always makes the problem much worse. And again, Obamacare didn't work. And if you didn't want Obamacare, what happened? You were fined by the federal government, right? You were fined if you didn't want to pay for the program you didn't want. That's what Chief Justice John Roberts did. Called it a tax, right? Because it's a tax, it's okay. We can go forth with this, right? That's how they were able to push this garbage through. Why would I pay a tax, though, for something I'm not getting any services on, though? And why is it any of your business if I don't want this health care? Let's say I don't want health care. All right, I'm not saying it's a wise or a poor decision, but I'm just saying, well, let's say you don't want health care. You've weighed your odds and said, listen, this is too costly. I don't use it. My health is fine. I can pay out of pocket for things I want, services I need. I'll go that route. I don't want to pay for this Obamacare. I don't want to pay for my employer to have to pay for my insurance. I just don't want it. I don't want it coming out of my paycheck. I don't use it. I've been in that situation many times. I said, listen, I don't want this. I don't want this program. I don't use it. Again, I'm not telling you what to do with your own health or what you should do, but some people don't want this. So why should the government come in and say, no, you will prove that you have health care, or otherwise you owe us X number of dollars when you pay your taxes, right? Isn't that what they normally do? They make you verify now on your tax form what your health care plan is. Why the government should be involved in that, I'm sure I don't know. But this is the case. This is what we found now. This is what becomes constitutional, apparently. We look at government medical tyranny. It's a thing that takes place constantly. Go look up Jacobson versus Massachusetts back in 1905. Medical tyranny is alive and well. We saw the same thing. I talked with you yesterday before yesterday's close about the COVID vaccine, the shots, they're toxic. The VAERS reports, right? The Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting Survey, right? With 2 million people on it. Such cases that talk about disability and death and God knows what else on it. Yet they told you had to take it if you wanted to stay employed, especially if you're a government worker. You got to take the shot. Otherwise, it's goodbye. If you're in the military, you got to take the shot. Otherwise, we'll kick you right out. We don't care. And that shot alone has 2 million people on it since it's being pushed since 2021. People that have these massive health effects as a result of taking the shot. That is government tyranny. Now you're saying, well, how does that relate to healthcare, Gervais? Come on, what does that mean? Well, it relates to it because if you get sick now you've got to get this healthcare, right? Keeps you sick, keeps you saying, well, geez, I got to get more healthcare, got to do more. And by the way, I just want to tell you, Edward Dow did a great job researching the amount of death that came as a result of the COVID shot and the massive harm and illness that resulted from it. By the way, look at his articles on this. Brilliant researcher, by the way. But I digress. Okay, I didn't mean to go off topic on medical tyranny. I could spend all day on this. But I just want to illustrate the point to you. If you're sick, if you're dependent on healthcare or healthcare services, you're in the matrix now. You're in the system. Now you've got to be on it. Or you've got to be on some other government program, Medicaid, Medicare, what have you. But this, make no mistake about it, that was a beta test for what is to come later. They wanted to see how you would comply. Would you take the shot? Would you take a shot that has zero safety testing, folks? Or if you look at any of the medical information on it, there's none that tells you what's even in the shot. And I call this a shot because it's not a vaccine, it's a shot. Didn't stop any of the transmission of the virus, didn't quell any of that. That's what a vaccine's supposed to do. It's supposed to stop you from getting the virus, right? The illness. That way you're not associated with it. That's the point of a vaccine. You take it so it's preventable. It's a prophylactic. But then they came out and said, well, the shot isn't 95% effective. Well, it's 40, it's 30, it stops these symptoms. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is not a vaccine then. That's something else. And then as time went on, we found out the mRNA technology in it has your body create the spike proteins of the COVID that were spliced into it. Your body becomes a host for producing these spike proteins that cause your immune system to weaken over time. Don't believe me? Go look it up. I always tell you, go look up your own research. I don't make this stuff up. I just tell you what I find. But back to the healthcare. I'm sorry, folks. I go off topic sometimes. We're talking about premiums now rising, right? And we know people will obviously falsify documentation to access healthcare. But what some of you might not know is that anyone, and I mean anyone, can always access an emergency room, even if it's not an emergency. President Reagan came up with this. Okay, right? It was on good merits, right? Everyone can use an emergency room, despite if you had health care or not, if you're poor or sick or whatever the hell it might be. But let's think about this. We've got 40 to 50 million illegals in this country right now. That's the real number. It's not the 11 or 12 or 22 million that they keep telling you. So this would exclude a lot of people from getting health care because in order to get Obamacare, you have to be an American citizen. To obviously get a job that would provide you health care services or pay for it or what have you, or be on some type of plan with you, you'd have to show documentation you're an American citizen. So the only way you can get on that is if you falsify the documentation. Could that be why we're seeing cases where people would falsify information to get access to it, or use a false social security number, or use the information of a deceased person? I think so. And by the way, we don't just see that in healthcare coverage. We see that all across the board. Getting jobs for illegal aliens, voting for illegal aliens, things of that nature, getting this perk program and what have you. But here's the thing. The illegal alien gets to go to the emergency room for free. But what about you? When you come in with your full coverage, your HMO, your PPO, what happens to your premiums then, folks? Well, short of nothing, it goes up. Your premiums go up. Because nothing is free. Someone's got to pay for that person's free service, right? And you, the American citizen, you pay more. That's what it comes down to. That's why costs go up. That's why the Affordable Care Act goes up, because you're paying more for those services. So congratulations, America. You've been conned yet again. You've been duped again to think that the Affordable Care Act would keep costs down when in reality they go up. And I'll give you one more example just to kind of go off on a tangent here. To enroll in public schools in America, you have to have your kid up to date on all the checkups. Really, it's just a way to get kids vaccinated in America. Give Big Pharma more money, but that's another day for another topic. So don't tell me that these illegal aliens that come in the country don't access the emergency room or don't access a hospital. Gavin Newsom himself allocated roughly $250 million last year for illegal aliens only with taxpayer money in California. So don't tell me that they're not taking your money and using it for something else. That is a bunch of nonsense in and of itself. But this is why the government needs to come in. I don't care if you doge it. I don't care what you do. There should be a program in place where they look at what's going on right now. They look at what's happening, who's enrolled, and they kick people off that shouldn't be on it. And then they locate the people that shouldn't be on it, and they deport them. How about that? Wouldn't that be a better means of using government money? If people are here illegally, and they're fraudulently using the system to get perks, to get health care, to utilize the system, to exploit the system, to put pressure on the system, to rise prices on the average American citizen, I don't think these people should be in the country. What do you think? I think you might think what I'm thinking. They shouldn't be here. And if they can put their name in the hat, I think you can find these people pretty easily. I think Elon Musk could find them pretty easily. Just a thought, folks. Just a thought. All right, let's move on. We got a few minutes remaining in the program. I had this article yesterday. I didn't get a chance to go over it. And this is out of Fox News. It says at least 40% of teachers inside California plan to quit in the next decade. Now, some of you are saying, well, so what, Jerace? So what? Who cares? People quit all the time. People quit. They retire. Baby boomers are getting older. So what? Doesn't matter. Come on, Jerace. Nothing big here. Well, there might be a little bit more to that. There might be a little bit more to public education that meets the eye. So nearly half of California retire or quit in the next 10 years, according to a new survey. Okay. Now, inside California, the share of teachers who say they plan to retire in the next 10 years is between 40 and 49% of an estimate, right? They say it's about 45% if they even it out. Okay, fine. That's what they found in the education report. But let's think about this right now. The average age of the California teacher right now is 45 and a half years of age. This means that the age likely is to remain a major reason for why people would retire. Because in the next 10 or so years, they hit 55, they put 30 years in, and they say, bon voyage, I'm done doing this nonsense, I'm out. But here's the problem. 36% of the teachers now in this state say they plan to retire in the next 10 years regardless of age. So there's a lot more evidence that indicates that the teacher morale has been declining nationwide, not just in California, of course, but obviously in California too, because of measures that we'll discuss momentarily. Let's think about this, though. In the 2025-2026 school year, inside California, there's roughly 286,000 credentialed teachers working in the California public school systems, K through 12. That means you're going to have 400,000 teachers leave the program in the next 10 years by 2036. That's a lot of people. Now, my background's in education, so when I was teaching in California, by the way, several years ago, I was talking to a fellow teacher about the exodus in education, and that was becoming more the norm. We could talk about primarily as the baby boomers start exiting the profession, as one could imagine. Many of these people are holding out until, of course, they hit 30 years, then they max out, they retire, they collect their pension, and they live their best days out. Wonderful. Most of them probably are going to leave the state too, by the way, because it's so unaffordable. But the sad truth is that education has been decimated by not only the CTA, the California Teachers Associations, the unions, and parents alike, but like the teachers, the students are also leaving the public school system as well. There's been some 1 million kids inside California, inside the public school system, that were there in 2020, right before COVID really took a hit on us, that are now no longer there. And they're expecting another 500,000 to be gone by 2036. So you'll see the system kind of play its way out, where they will not need as many teachers, which obviously will be a good thing because the teachers won't be there. But what is problematic about this is that the average teacher only spends about 14 to 15 years in the profession now. They don't spend their entire career in education. So you're going to see in states like California and all across the country that simply don't want to stay because they don't want to be in the program anymore. And in California in particular, by the way, there are several reasons for this too, by the way. Not just in California, but the first thing is that the state you're in, California, you can't afford to buy a home in any major city if you're on a teacher's salary. That's just a truism. So what incentive is it for you to go and spend, 4 years on a six-figure diploma, a piece of paper, to get a job where you can't even buy a home? There's no incentive for that. There's no lure to it. There's nothing there. There's nothing advantageous about living in a city like Los Angeles, or Orange County, or San Diego, or anywhere on the coast, certainly not the Bay Area. And you get in a profession where you're bogged down with so much debt and so little money, you can't even purchase a home for yourself. There's no ploy to it, folks. There's nothing to it. That's a big problem. Now, the next thing is, California being the radical state that it is, obviously created by the wonderful Democrats up in Sacramento, they issued a new state code recently in 2019. Get ready for this. You're going to love this. You cannot remove a student or a youth from class anymore if they're disruptive. You have to let them be. So if they're disrupting the class, they're disrupting the learning process, you have to sit there and try to become your own psychologist and get the students to stop on there. You can't kick them out of class, send them to the principal, get them disciplined, or what have you. Nope. The Democrats in Sacramento have decided that you, the teacher, just have to put up with what's in the classroom. Discipline is no more in the classroom. So little Jimmy or little Jane can disrupt the class ad nauseum, stop the learning process, and you, as a teacher who spent all your day getting your lesson plan ready, now have to put up with this nonsense. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to have that headache every single day? The disciplinary issues inside of your classroom. You wouldn't want to do that. So now, as a result, kids don't learn as much. The learning process is diminished. And, of course, you have to lower expectations, so you pass the kids through, which is not good. Does it create a better America? I would think everyone would agree with me on this. All of these issues, the pay, the demands from the state and the stress that goes along with it, the surface nuisances known as disruptive children, all become a problem and destroy a once and great and noble and honorable profession, education. That, of course, and intertwining with the socialist Maoist tactics in the classroom become another issue. I don't think we need to talk about Drag Queen Story Hour too much, where the cross-dressing perverts come in and speak to young children. I don't think many parents buy all that too, by the way. I don't think they like it. I don't like it. I don't think any normal parent would. But this is why education is dying. This is why California's education is critically dying. This is why you're going to see a lot of people leaving the profession. And by the way, why would kids who don't value an education, why would they all of a sudden want to get into education? That doesn't make any sense, does it, folks? If you're in education, you're not going to want to stay in it, even if you love teaching. So if you don't like education, if you never valued it in the first place, you saw no meaning to it, because that's the way you've been programmed, that, hey, this is stupid, these teachers suck, learning sucks, I don't want to do this, why would you get into that profession? So you're going to have less kids as a result getting into education because there is no value to it anymore. It doesn't mean anything to them. Now, not all students, I'm not speaking in general. Of course, some kids appreciate education, they appreciate their teachers. But why would anyone worth a damn want to get into a profession if they have the intelligence to go into a program where it's going to be very, very costly, very expensive, and then they get nothing in return from it? There's no incentive inside California anymore to be a teacher. And again, the high cost of living, the inability to buy a home, the dealing with the type of students now today in California. You have the second worst public school records, testing scores in the country inside California. And that's why we find ourselves in a lot of the situations we're in inside California. And by the way, just to reiterate what's going on here in the classroom, Gavin Newsom's wife made a fortune through a nonprofit that pushes gender films inside California classrooms. Maybe that's the new step people need to take. Maybe that's what needs to take place, right? Maybe that is where things need to go. Instead of actually teaching, you go through an NGO and you push out this gender ideology crap to young children in the classroom. Maybe that's the next step people should be going to. Who knows? I just found it funny. This is the Gateway Pundit. It says, Newsom's wife runs a nonprofit charity called the Representation Project, which promotes films that examine gender stereotypes and related issues. What the hell that means, I have no idea. God only knows. Looks like she's pocketed upwards of $3.7 million in recent years through her charity work. Yeah, they get rich off this stuff, don't they, folks? Says Governor Gavin Newsom's wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom, they always have to have a middle name now, is a filmmaker whose documentaries have been seen by millions, but it didn't happen purely of talent. Yep, she has to focus on toxic masculinity in the classroom. I think there's a lack of masculinity in society, not more of it. It's unbelievable. Folks, thanks for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Make sure to share the show with others. Keep your mind strong. Keep your preparation up, folks. Water, food, ammo. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see you back tomorrow on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good. God bless.